times we had. I see it now, I see it now. Real love, now I'll break through to show to you that I'm more good than I am bad. I'll work it out, I'll work it out. And I'll be somewhere that you need me, and I'll be holding my breath, waiting for you to show. Times we had, I see it now, I see it now. Real love, now I'll break through to show to you that I'm more good than I am bad. I'll work it out, I'll work it out. And I'll be somewhere that you need me, and I'll be holding my breath, waiting for you to show.
Some days there's no one else who loves me like you used to. Some days I'm not myself, there's no one I can turn to. All the feelings that we shared are in the past. relationships are never meant to last. All the feelings that we shared are in the past. Your relationships are never meant to last. It might take some time, but I'll be alright. I'm moving on. I'm moving on. I know times are tough, but I've had enough. I'm moving on. I'm moving on.
Okay, default. What about now? Jesus Christ. This sound. Okay, what's going on, guys? How's everybody doing? Flo looking nice? You talking about the hair? What's going on, guys? Okay. So, I rearranged some things. That actually, I still can't explain that. I have no idea what's up with I have no idea what's going on with OBS and me. We just don't get along for some stupid reason. So hey, what's going on, everybody? So yeah, it's been a while since we've had a stream. I have a few things up. Mold on fleek. Oh my god, dude! I have, as a friend of mine said, I have hockey hair right now. So I have the whole John Wick going on, and I do plan on going to the range pretty soon and sending some down range, looking just like John Wick. But watching Ryan's lips, I'm certain he's swearing in Italian. All right. So I'm glad you guys can finally hear me, and yeah. So we're getting back in the swing of things with doing these. With doing these streams. I'm going to give everyone a second to hop in now that we're all caught up with the sound. And yeah, Josh is going to be doing live streams as well now. So we're going to have the best of both worlds. We're going to have me handling I'm going to be handling the Bitcoin and ETH, and Josh is going to be handling the DeFi and some of those crazy pairs that are just flying lately. And yeah, hopefully we kind of come full circle and give you guys one of the better crypto YouTubes to turn into. So on behalf of myself and my partner Josh Rager, I want to thank you guys for tuning into the BlockRoots live stream. These started off as crypto and coffee streams a couple months ago, and then we transitioned to the afternoon. a few days a week. I have our niece gets dropped off, and this has been the last couple of years. You know, as our nieces have gotten older, now we have two nephews. Their parents work in healthcare, so our nieces would get dropped off. We'd take them to school, and then crypto and coffee had to get pushed off, and then it became afternoon coffee, and then I don't know. We kind of fell out of the swing of things, but we're back. We're back and ready to kick some ass and take some names. All right, so yeah, myself and my partner Josh Rigger, we have the BlockRoots YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Canner and Clark, and at, I believe it's just now, Josh got the handle at Rager. That's awesome. I'm surprised it wasn't taken. Makes me want to change mine to at Clark. But I confuse people already enough because they assume my name is Clark. Clark is just one of the names of our finer four-hooved friends that we have here. And yeah, we have the BlockRoots platform, which is an educational platform. We focus on market profile and order flow. I think it's an extremely comprehensive platform in that regard, in that specific subject. So yeah, let's get it started. I think that pretty much covers everything. We're not going to be shilling anything to you. We're going to be going over some Bitcoin price action, ETH price action. First, we're going to cover some of the things that I think are worth going over that are not with respect to the charts, some developments, in particular the thing with Michael Saylor that has taken place today. So yeah, let's get it started. And as a kind suggestion, if you could go ahead and hit the like button, we would really appreciate that. The YouTube algo prioritizes based on that. It's not for dopamine. It's strictly to get, you know, your love and support and to maintain our presence on YouTube. We think that there's a lot of garbage on YouTube. So yeah, let's transition over to the screen. All right, that works. I don't know what's going on, guys. I have no idea. Yeah, I know it's okay. You'll see in a sec. I was just doing a roll call. Don't worry. Okay, give you guys a second. It's my fault. I understand. It's my fault. All right, so now that everyone will hopefully get caught up and see that we have sound, this has probably been the worst video with the sound issues that we've had, but make sure that okay, so we're back. All right, so I was just going through the chat, which was to the side of the window, and saying hi to everybody. So if you didn't hear me, which you definitely didn't, first live stream in a minute, if you didn't hear me, then that's all I was doing. I was just going through the chat and saying hi to everybody. So yeah, I said I want to go over, obviously, Bitcoin, we'll go over ETH, we'll go over some DeFi pairs, we'll take some suggestions as to what charts you want to look at. We're going to do a couple giveaways. So we're going to give away a couple BlockRoots memberships, and we're going to give away $100 in BTC. So I think, look, one of my, actually, no, I thought, okay. So a friend of mine sent me a message, buddy of mine who's one of my friends who's one of the portfolio managers just sent me something. He said, you have to spare 15 minutes and check out this interview with Jeff Bezos. All right, so we're going to first take a look at some things that I think are important to go over that are not necessarily on the chart. So this right here, okay, so Michael Saylor, okay, this is, he's going to be hosting a Bitcoin for corporations today, all right? So apparently Michael Saylor is going to be speaking to a bunch of corporate types, a bunch of company leaders, and hopefully getting them on board with a plan that is similar to his, although I don't think that you're going to find anyone who's as gung-ho and diehard about BTC as he is, right? Michael Saylor has definitely taken a sip of the proverbial Kool-Aid. He has jumped in head first. But this is awesome, all right? I think that this is a net positive regardless of the outcome, right? Not regardless of the outcome. I think that no matter what, it's a net positive because if you think of it, just very simple thought process. The people that are going to this, he might not convert everybody. He might not convert, 1% of the people that go. But there's no seller that can come out of this, right? Whereas I think he's guaranteed to maybe swing someone's opinion, right? At least one person. And I think that in terms of the type of activity that this brings and the type of confidence that this instills, it can only be a net positive, right? So, he might have 100 people show up to this. I don't even know how many people are going to be going to this or tuning in. He might have 20 people, who knows? But if he could even change the opinion of one person, that's a net positive for BTC. It's not like this can create any extra sell pressure, right? He is essentially just spreading the virus. So this is from a guy who is, he's made himself more or less the ambassador for Bitcoin, or one of the primary ambassadors for Bitcoin. And, this is also from someone who not too long ago was dismissive of Bitcoin. So the fact that he has sort of jumped ship and joined the better team, I think that speaks volumes to people that maybe are a little bit hesitant to get involved, right? And again, they might not necessarily want to partake in the same action that he is with converting his treasury to one that only holds reserves in BTC. But even a small amount right now is in an asset that has a fixed and very low supply, it could translate to a lot of upside, right? And the idea is, it's not so much that I want to convey that it's not so much that he, if he converts someone and they dump $50 million in Bitcoin, that's going to have a tremendous impact on price. It's just that it represents one extra person who has taken the leap, right? And made that jump that initially was essentially a career risk. So that's all it really comes down to. It's this trickle down effect, or a very slow process of adoption. And a lot of these people were people that, again, were very dismissive of Bitcoin initially. So I think the fact that there are people that are even willing to, and again, I don't know how many people are showing up or how many companies this is addressing, but I think that people, the willingness of people to sit in on this itself says a lot. So there are 291 people in Michael Saylor's first session, Bitcoin macro strategy, 291 likes. Well, I haven't really clicked on this and found out what it took to get access to this, but again, I think this will have a net positive effect. All right, so we'll see. I think we'll see in the near future. I think that what we've seen in the last month, and I'm going to go over sort of the concept of not losing your way and not overthinking things, is that we've had our first major pullback after the break of the all-time high, right? And we gave a lot of credence to the daily level breaking, but as a reminder, you're likely going to put in some type of higher low in the weekly. So the fact that we had people like Guggenheim, who initially came out and had a $400,000 price target, and then, in the middle of January, he's talking about Bitcoin over $30,000 being too elevated. I think that this is all still, I think that the bull thesis is all still there. It what these people were trying to do was talk the price down so that they can get their fill. Because again, we're in the beginning of the year where we're having these releases of 13Fs, for example, where asset managers that have over, I think it's 100 or 150 million dollars in assets under management, they have to list what is essentially on their book. So up until the end of, I believe it's first quarter of 2021, we'll see these, or maybe it's the first 60 days, we're going to see more and more big players come out as having positions in Bitcoin. And I believe it was Scott Maynard, right? Their proposal was not, it is not possible for it to have gone through before, I believe February 1st, actually. So maybe they're starting to get in now. All right, so that's with regard to Michael Saylor's post. One other thing I want to talk about. So we've seen a ton of inflows for Grayscale's ETH Trust, right? ETH investment holdings have increased substantially over the last 7 days, over the last 24 hours. ETH is pretty interesting, right? It definitely doesn't have, I don't think that it has the respect that Bitcoin does, right? I think Bitcoin is a little bit more, or seems a little less risky, right, compared to ETH from an institutional standpoint, right? Bitcoin is something that has been adopted before really any other crypto asset by larger institutional players. But this pickup in Grayscale's ETH holdings is quite substantial, right? It doesn't really stack up to the amount that we saw added to BTC, but this leads into the CME's Eth Futures listing, which I think it is a sell the listing event. So I think that we're going to have this ETH run up to that, but I think that essentially it's still going to be a sell the listing event. So I'm going to cover that when we get into the charts. But just so you know, Grayscale is the reason why you get, if you are signed up for BlockFi, right? So we see, for example, and I could tell already that in the stream, I've been completely thrown off by the sound mistakes that happened twice. I could tell when like my flow is just like a fucking wrench is thrown into it and you're just like trying to scurry and find your footing again. But the Grayscale Trust, right? Grayscale is the reason why BlockFi is able to pay you interest, right, on your deposits, okay? Because if we look at Grayscale, so we go to, this is on FINRA Morningstar market reports. So we go to GBTC, and you could pull up pretty much anything on this website. You could pull up, with regards to bonds, treasuries, equities. So if we go into GBTC and we go into shareholders, you could actually see that BlockFi is the second largest shareholder. So essentially, they're able to capture this premium, so they could they could very easily afford to pay you, whether it's 9 or 10% on your deposits, right, onto their platform, because they're collecting, I don't remember what the premium is at the peak, but they're collecting a premium that's in excess of 2 to 3x that. Speaking of GBTC and equity ownership in terms of who owns the most, Three Arrows Capital, Suzu, and Kyle Davies. These guys are people on Twitter that you need to follow, okay? Now, they are Bitcoin bulls through and through. They are clearly bullish on the crypto asset space. They are crypto asset hedge fund managers. But when they start getting a little bit louder about, Bitcoin's near-term targets, when they start posting things like 42K, and I say that because I believe Suzu, he might have posted something about 42K recently, or 75K, and he also posted about an ETH strike listed at 25K. When they start becoming a little bit more explicit about, let's just say, what's going to happen in the short term, I think that's a long signal. Honestly, I can't find a time where they have been explicitly bullish, right? Not just kind of hinting at it, but I don't know how to describe it. They're constantly bullish, right? Because they are in the crypto, the digital asset space. But there's a certain type of post that is different from the norm, right? where you could just tell something is brewing in the short term. So you have to follow them. You have to follow Suzu, and you have to follow Kyle Davies, right? Because again, they've been on the mark for the last, I don't know, what is it, the last year, right? Since March, even going back right before the crash. And I don't think that it should be any surprise. These guys are tuned in. They are tuned in. I just broke a rubber band that was in my hand. These guys are tuned in, right, to institutional flow. So it makes sense, right? When you think about it, these guys are their fingers are on the pulse. All right. So speaking of one last thing before we get into, and if you want to check out this website, go to FINRA markets.morningstar.com, and you can look up pretty much anything you want here, right? So company information, specific shareholders in companies, equities, options, bonds, mutual funds, and the likes of it. Okay. So real quick, let me just look at something on the side. Okay. What is ETH at? Okay, ETH is making quite a move up, right? 1 second, just making some adjustments, and then we will get right to it. And, excuse me, sorry for the delay. I'm just changing around some positions. All right. Okay, so last thing I want to talk about is ETH Futures. So I think, yeah, Suzu gives away so much free alpha on Twitter, and so does Brian. So does Kyle. And I want to qualify the type of post it is. So what I'll do is I'll share some of them to BlockRoots members, and hopefully I'll have some of them next time for the next live stream. Just because there is a different way that they post when things are kind of brewing in the short term. But like I said, they're always bullish, so you have to be able to distinguish. I guess it's the tone. So yeah, so about ETH Futures, right? ETH Futures, they are being listed on February 8th, so that is this coming Monday. I think that this is sell the news type of event. So not sell the news. I think that this is, I put it this way, I'm probably going to be pulling off some of my ETH position before then, right? I haven't exactly decided when I'll pull off the position to see any kind of response, but I know that it's going to be in the days prior to that. So that's as much as I'll tell you with my own positioning. Now, I think that there's a lot of people that are buying in anticipation of this, and you see that again. So I think someone just said, "No, I'm not worried about Sue and Kyle using their Twitter as a bullhorn." No, not necessarily. What was I going to say? We see a substantial increase in open interest, and it just happens to be that it's leading up in the week to the ETH Futures listing. So, I'm a little bit hesitant to keep the foot on the gas pedal going through this event. I'd rather watch what the response is afterward. I think that you're going to get an unwind in the short term, and it could be a very quick, violent unwind that ends up recovering quickly. But I think that ultimately that's what's going to occur. As far as the ETH Futures contract, if we just look at the contract, how it's going to be structured. So each contract is 50 Ether. So we're talking about $50,000 notional, whereas BTC each contract is 5 BTC, which is around 180,000 somewhat dollars now. So this is a little bit more than a third of the BTC contract, or a little bit less than a third of the BTC contract. This is something that could get a ton of interest. Clearly they're listing the product for a reason. But again, I think it's something that I don't know if, again, I'm not going to be, without giving any kind of specific advice, I'm not going to be holding my position through this event. I'll take a substantial amount of it off. Just because, it reminds me of, and it's in completely different context, but, or is it, right? When BTC futures were listed, that was kind of like mark the top. So I'd rather watch the response after this ends up being listed, and we'll see the week after, maybe the few days after. Okay, so let's take a look at BTC. I think we've shaken off some of the anger that was flowing through my veins from the sound mishap. Okay, yeah, so Neil, as far as selling the listing, there's going to be people that are front running that idea, right? So I'm going to come up with my own personal plan as to how I'm going to start getting out of this position. Just to give you a heads up, on the side of the screen, when I was just off to the side and doing something, I was just taking off a little bit, just because I hadn't noticed in the time that we started the stream that we had jumped up. I think we had jumped up about 2%. So nothing substantial, but just always have to play it smart. Okay, so let's look at BTC. So a few things that I want to talk about. I made this mistake, right? A lot of people make this mistake, is being too myopic, right? I've gone over this concept before. When you are, the tighter your focus, the bigger your blind spot. So me primarily being a passive trader with regard to trend following, right? It's really just trend following, and spending most of my time trading on the lower time frames. It's easy to allow those two things to creep into each other, right? Meaning that I am so focused on the lower time frames that sometimes I allow that to maybe muddy up my thinking with regard to the higher time frames. And I'm sure that many people can share this, because what happens is, you're focused on the higher time frame, you get into a position on the higher time frame, and then you start looking down at the lower time frames for confirmation. And you're looking at a 5-minute chart and you're thinking, all right, it should be picking up faster than this. And you start getting into your own head. So I think it's important from time to time to zoom out, right? And just remember where we are. So in this case, where we are is we just broke above the all-time high. Do we think that Bitcoin is going to put in the next all-time high? Do we think it's going to put in the next all-time high at just 2x its previous all-time high? I think that we have certain types of secular tailwinds right now. It seemed like last week that things got a little bit shaky. What I was worried about was some type of contagion across all markets, right? Where you have asset managers and traditional markets maybe becoming a little bit more risk off, and you're going to have this increase in volatility. Traditional markets sell off, right? You could think of all these things that can happen, and then contagion being that spreading to crypto, and seeing some sort of similar liquidity event that is not one for one with the March crash, but a major sell-off that affects the crypto markets, right? And it's sort of last in, first to go when it comes to risk assets. So Bitcoin, I don't think crypto or Bitcoin as a whole has really shaken itself from what it is, right, in terms of being a higher beta asset and still riskier play on traditional players' books. And are they going to get rid of their Apple position or their BTC position? They're probably going to trim their BTC position. So what I was worried about was that contagion. It seems like the market was able to absorb what occurred, specifically with GameStop. There wasn't any kind of major spillover in the equities markets. We saw a major response, right, by the ES, by the SPX, but it has since put in some substantial price action to the upside, and it seems like things are where the coast is clear, put it that way. So that brings us back to quantitative easing, right? A dollar that might be rallying on the way down, but I don't think the dollar's going to zero, but it's just clearly a weaker dollar. And also, Bitcoin is now fresh on everybody's mind, and it doesn't have to be as a substitute for the dollar, as diehard maxis might say. It could just be that it's a new interesting asset that's getting more respect, and therefore you're going to be putting it in your, you're going to be passively indexing to that as well, as a, even as someone who is maybe a little bit risk averse. A year ago maybe you wouldn't have considered crypto or Bitcoin at all, but now you're willing to say, okay, I'll throw a little bit to it. And you don't have to have this thesis of low interest rates, quantitative easing, inflation. You don't have to have that. It could just be a lot of people are just getting into it because, all right, other people are getting into it now. So I think we're back to the point where, again, this being break of the all-time high, me mentally, I'm saying, break of the all-time high. Yes, there's a lot of euphoria in the market, but these things can persist for some time. So we have a break of the all-time high, and we have the first major consolidation after this. So ultimately, in the beginning, this daily level, and I think I said this during the live stream, This daily level held a lot more weight for me because, again, we hadn't had this interrupted at all, right? Even 4-hour lows, I don't remember what the record was, but we hadn't had a 4-hour low that was interrupted in, God knows how long. But we zoom in, right? We see the daily level broken, and it's almost like everyone starts thinking, even myself, I start gearing up to more downside, forgetting that, on a weekly structure, you're going to have a higher low at some point, right? So why can't this be the higher low? Why do we always have to extrapolate a bit further down from that? So another thing that was important leading up to this, and this is just, again, what you need to have so that you don't get lost, right, on lower time frame price action. And when price is ranging and when it's consolidating, this is when people start really messing up their their bias starts getting fucked up, because it's a lot of period. There's this really long period of indecision, right? There's a tremendous amount of there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty that is created during a range. Price isn't doing anything. It gives you plenty of time to think. So another thing that we wanted to look at was the 50 period moving average, which historically was a significant level. So if we go all the way back, so we'll go to something like, was IM Bitstamp? So yeah, so we go all the way back to the previous bull market, and 50 period moving average was historically a good area to expect some type of dynamic support. So whether this is a systematic response or this is just the actual buyers manually entering in at this level, it's a value opportunity. Price being extended for some time, coming back to it, it's sort of a clear indication that there has been some type of reversion to the mean. So if we look at this on, we'll go to now that they have multi-time frame, this was pretty much where price found support, right? This was the low of this entire consolidation so far, right? Then that brings us to what occurred with the Elon pump, which, is just, I think it was really a poor timing for exchanges to go down. But as a reminder, exchanges went down because of what, right? They were not adequately, prepared for the they weren't adequately prepared for the amount of people that were going to be coming on to buy for the first time, which is very bullish in the long term, right? So the problem with that is, derivatives got very overextended. The index price was not able to keep up because you have one of the major oracles for the index price being Coinbase, right? So without any of this, without the tether, between futures and the spot price, what happened was, in this move right off the bat, you had funding of 20 plus basis points, which made these positions very expensive to hold, right? Very expensive to hold. You didn't have the spot demand that was able to keep this carrying through. And not only is it expensive to hold and becomes very heavy at that point at the highs, but it's also, it's pretty enticing to open up a short opportunity at that point, because you're going to get paid to keep that position open, right? And, if you're looking at this price action right here, and you're keeping in mind some of the more important levels that this came into. So we're looking at weekly and daily levels more recently. This came right into a major area of resistance. It was what? It was like what was this candle on a 4-hour? This candle was, let's see, wait one sec. This 4-hour candle alone, come on. Jesus Christ. Let me just use this. I'm trying to hold down shift to get this to work. 4-hour candle alone was like 20%. So a 20% candle vertically into resistance, that's an outlier, right? That's a candle that is multiples the norm in terms of being, 2-3 times standard deviation. What is the normal standard deviation, right? And this is kind of an event that you would normally fade. So now you have something that you would normally fade because it's into resistance. I didn't do a good job of fading it. So you normally fade it because it's something that is abnormal and into resistance from a distance. And then you have the fact that the position is very expensive to hold for anyone who got involved at the highs. You have a lot of people that got crowded into the highs. And again, then it's enticing as well for you to open up, or someone else to open up a short position. So you have that kind of sell pressure that's going to be opening positions. You have that sell pressure from people to close out, right? So they don't have to pay that funding. There's a ton of reasons why this just became very overweight and more likely to collapse on itself. And again, I didn't heed my own advice, right? I didn't even take this into consideration. I was pretty bullish at the high, which is pretty stupid. But, we've fully retraced this entire move right now, which is, if this was an area where the market was going to do its job and reject us, Well, the fact that we're able to sort of mosey our way back up to it is, I think it's clearly bullish, right? You have a very nice W bottom, okay, which is a good thing. And then another thing to look at, which is this line right here, is the anchored VWAP from the highs. So let me clean some of this up because I've already put some lines on I don't want. So this high, right, this VWAP is from the high volume level within this high. So think of this as the risk that was put on over the last couple of days since this high. Okay, so now we're above it, right? This is a really good sign that buyers are back in control, right? Where the risk comes on, right? If price is trading below that, sellers are in control. If price is trading above it, then buyers are in control. So everything is looking a lot better now, right? The important thing to do is to always have some type of tool that you're going to fall back on when you are beginning to muddy up your decision-making process, right? So if you're looking at the low time frames and you're doing, what I was doing, which was confusing what's going on in the lower time frames and allowing it to, not confusing it, but allowing it to influence your higher time frame decision-making, you'll really have no objective criteria to act off of. So what you have to do is have some type of foundation, right? And again, one of the things is market structure. So we have weekly market structure. Now we have a higher low on the weekly. All right, we have a high and then a higher low in the weekly so far in the making. Okay, we have the 50-period moving average. So these things are things that are, useful to gauge the strength of a trend, right? Market structure and something like a trend following tool. What you need to be able to do is to zoom out and to see clearly that we are still above the 50-period moving average, right? I'm speaking for myself. So I should have zoomed out and reminded myself that, hey, the trend is going to be messy. It's going to be noisy. And again, Bitcoin's going to be hyper volatile. But until we lose this, until we lose weekly structure, until we, fall back within the gap, then it's just, that's what it is. It's a consolidation after a break of an all-time high, right? Which is to be expected. And it's almost like it's very easy to get overly bullish on BTC where we act like there's going to be no corrections. So as a reminder, you have to have something that you will fall back on. And I think that it does have to be pretty basic, right? Moving averages are very useful tools. Okay, they make the trend a lot less subjective. Okay, we have the 50-period moving average moving upward. We have it facing upward. We have something like the 20-period moving average that is still above, and now we had this compression. So, typically during the periods where they compress and they don't cross, this is seen as sort of a value opportunity to get involved. And again, these are just things that allow you to really step back and remind yourself that not a whole lot has changed, right? Where are we right now? We're really just within the middle of a range. So that being said, let me just get into some of the lower time frame levels. And then if you guys want, just go ahead and leave some tickers in the comments. And then we'll check out some pairs. But what did I say recently? And I think this is probably only something that BlockRoots members know. These are the two weekly levels. So we have 38,154 and 32,266 weekly levels. I think that you can get away with this higher low developing above 37. So think about 37,000, right? Versus waiting for this high to be taken above 39. So some type of higher low forming above here. And, I'm bullish on this structure the way it is, right? But in terms of validating the fact that the trend is resuming, I think that this is a good level to go off of. And clearly right now we're beginning to find some level of support in the short term above here, which is a good sign. As a reminder, right, you are still kind of, you're still into resistance, right? You're still coming into weekly resistance. But again, if you're willing to take a little bit more risk, I would say that you could look for that lower time frame price action to develop at that level. So let me just look at some of the comments. Yeah, so as a market profile guy, I am intraday focused, but I'm not going to miss out on trend following on some of the strongest trending assets of all time. So that's a problem with BTC, JR, or cryptocurrencies as a whole, is that you have this sort of new nascent asset class that is experiencing a really strong bullish trend across the board. And we have these secular tailwinds that make it a very attractive asset or basket of assets to trend follow. So something like this is very different than, if you're trading the ES, right? If you're trading crude oil, trading something like the ES, you'll probably have some type of exposure to the S&P that's a passive, you're passively indexed into the stock market, and then maybe you trade the ES intraday. But BTC, it's easy to try to have the best of both worlds, right? Because again, I want to be able to access the moves that occur on the daily and on the weekly with regard to strong trending moves, and then 90% of my trading is on the intraday, right? And I end up trading around what are these longer term positions. I don't think that, I think that this is probably one of the more difficult, I've said, and this, just to clarify, I've said that crypto is easier to trade than a lot of other assets. It's an easier poker table to play at, but it is difficult because if you're trading futures, you're margined in BTC, so you're always worried, if you're not trading USDT margin futures, you're always thinking about what the underlying is doing. If you're intraday focused, you're always dealing with the really romantic narrative that exists with, constant barraging of these higher time frame price targets left and right. You see how long these moves last, right? How they persist. So it's very difficult to, to be, let's say, only a scalper with BTC, right? And not have a position. And then as a trader, right, I would be remiss if my position in BTC didn't involve some level of nimbleness, right? If I didn't try to get in into the trend at the best locations and try to get out as well. So rather than, just have an investment in BTC that I'm never touching, what I end up having is a portion of BTC and ETH and a few others that I'm just like, I'm not going to touch those. I have a very big bag of BTC that's like that. With everything else, it's much smaller. But then having a basket that is trend following, right? That you're managing actively, right? And then having your intraday trading. So this can get pretty muddy. But it's very difficult to not do, right? It's very tempting to, again, I've used this term before. It's very romantic now. It's a very romantic asset class, right? So if I was going to be just an intraday trader, I genuinely feel like, I'd be missing out, right? By not having some type of trend following system also, even if it's crude, right? Even if it's like, just when we're crossed over the 20 on the weekly and the daily, some type of Heikin-Ashi combined with moving averages, some sort of basic strategy just to have exposure to the trend, right? And I don't mess with that. And that's on a side account. It'd be very difficult to not have that in this asset class. Okay. Why do you chart on Bitstamp when major volume? Oh, so the only reason I'm looking at Bitstamp, Kranti, is because of the price history. So I only look at Bitstamp to look at the entire chart. I don't really chart on Bitstamp. It was just to pull up the entire price history. I don't know if there are any physical ETH settled futures contracts. Maybe Bakkt. Does Bakkt have any? So I don't know. But yeah, yes, Don. I mean, listen, there's some really basic trend following strategies that work extremely well in crypto, right? But what you have to be willing to do is to not mess with them too much. And that's one of the most difficult things that a trader can do, is to like have a very basic system and not try to make it overly fancy. And I think that that's another thing that's difficult to do if you have, if you're focused on the intraday, if you're an intraday scalper, if you're an order flow trader, you're already doing something that I think is, I guess, of the upper echelon in terms of approaches. So it's actually more difficult for someone maybe like myself to go to something that's very simple, even though I find the things that I'm using when I'm trading, when I'm, observing order flow and market profile, they're simple to me. It's difficult to accept that there are some really simple approaches to this market with regard to the higher time frame. But again, there are, right? And just do a little bit of testing. You might not capture 80% of the trend. You might not capture 90% of it, but you'll capture a majority of it. All right. So again, we're within a weekly range with BTC. If you ask me which way this is going to resolve, I think that over the last couple of days, it's been difficult to tell, right? I was a little bit uncertain, but I think the fact that now that things in traditional markets seem like that they have found some level of stability. VIX dropping, ES moving back up, S&P, S&P 500 moving back up. When I say ES, I'm just talking about E-mini futures. And again, we have larger players come into the space. I think that the trend is just doing what is expected, which is consolidating after a major trending move. All right. As far as ETH goes, ETH has been looking very strong against BTC, right? So ETH breaking out of almost a 2-year range against BTC. ETH, ETH is things are constantly in price discovery, but this is in price discovery above the all-time high now. And I think that what we can say with a degree of confidence is that, and this is difficult to pair with the same idea of taking some off the table with the CME futures contracts being listed. But again, we're just going to have to adapt as we go along. If we have an initial sell-off after the CME contracts list and we have stability, I don't see a reason why ETH breaking its all-time high would put in any less than BTC. It's the higher beta of the two. I think that it tends to overthrow a lot more than BTC, right? That comes in both directions, though. So I don't see why ETH would just break above its all-time high and just pull back from there. But again, in the short term, I think that we can expect some volatility from the CME or right after. Whether that's from the CME or after, it's a combination of how people are behaving around the listing, right? People like myself, I'm going to be selling a little bit before then, if not most of it. Okay. So ETH, again, as long as ETH maintains, in my opinion, as long as ETH maintains this higher low, so 1300, I think it's still game on, right? The last thing I would want to see is ETH to start breaking some of this market structure and falling back within this range. But again, we could get a substantial pullback on Monday or leading up to Monday. I'm just looking through the chat right now. All right, so give me some pairs to look at. I'm a little rusty right now, as you can tell. So give me some pairs. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I mentioned this yesterday on Twitter, was why we see reversals, in the short term at least, after major liquidations. So liquidations are one of the things that I pair with order flow analysis, and it's part of order flow analysis. I don't look at liquidation levels. I have my opinions on those that I won't voice too loudly. I think that they are pretty presumptuous in assuming certain amounts of leverage that are used. And also larger participants don't really use that much leverage, period. But again, not to get into liquidity levels or liquidation levels, you've seen those charts with the lines all over them. I'm talking about just actual liquidations, right? So we see a big flush of liquidations. So whether it's a ton of longs liquidated, a ton of shorts liquidated, and we have this sort of crescendo where it's building up and then we have a major spike, right? So price takes out a low, price takes out a high, and there's a massive amount of liquidations. Liquidations are not through market orders. So they are through limit orders, right? So these orders are placed on the limit order book. So they have to be eaten through. The exchange is not going to let you off that easily. They're not going to take they're not going to let it off without taking their fair share at the best cost. What happens is, though, and I've gone over this on BlockRoots before, and there's a video in supplementary videos, and it is I think it's labeled the fake out dump or reversal, one of the reversal patterns that we talk about. So you have to think about what are longs and what are shorts. So if you're long, what are you? If you're short, what are you? Okay. If you're long, you're a seller, right? If you are short, you're a buyer, right? And you have to think about this as longs are future sellers, shorts are future buyers. It doesn't even have to be a short. Anyone who's sold is a future buyer, right? If you sold your position in BTC and you got into cash, what are you at that point? You're a Bitcoin buyer, unless you just, walk off into the sunset. So when you liquidate a bunch of participants, right? So let's say that, let's pair this with some type of structure. So above here, all right, let's just use this as point of reference. This Elon high, right? So the Elon high, you nuke above there, okay, and you liquidate a bunch of shorts, right? You see cascade of liquidations, price squeezes upward, shorts covering. What's it called? Voluntarily getting out of position, so through covering, and then involuntary by being forced out of position through liquidation. What you've essentially done is actually freed up the other side of the book, right? What might have existed potentially on the other side of the book. So for one, you have, so let's say that you trigger a bunch of, right? You liquidate a bunch of shorts up here, right? So if these sellers up here assume that price was going to come down here, what you could expect is they probably have some sort of take profit. So anywhere between here and here, with just OCO orders alone, you could have a bunch of take profits here. And now a take profit to a short is a cover, right? So it's essentially buying pressure. So as price passes down, there's resistance from that. Not only that, when you nuke price upward, right, and you make shorts cover, if price starts to fall back down, what did you create? By taking those shorts out of the market, you just put them on the sidelines again. And they could potentially re-up and add themselves again in this direction as the market reverses. So what you end up doing by liquidating a lot of participants is freeing up the other side in terms of friction. So if you liquidate a bunch of longs, right? So if we have, let's say, price is approaching this level, it's a breakout, price pops up above, liquidates some shorts, right? Liquidates a bunch of longs, okay? So all of those longs, some of those longs, doesn't really matter, might have had orders to take profit, right? They would have even if they didn't have OCO orders that would have activated to take profit, they essentially would have been a seller, right? So you freed up sellers in the direction north, okay? So if you break down, liquidate a bunch of longs, there's a lot less book pressure up here now, potentially, okay? So, all of those longs would have been sellers, all right? Whether, again, they would have done it manually or they would have done it through an OCO order. So what you end up doing when you liquidate one side is you end up reducing the friction in the opposite direction. And I think that this is clearly this is a very simplified version of what takes place, because you also have some type of algorithmic activity, some type of bot activity that probably reads into the amount of liquidations and says, okay, so post this amount of liquidations and this reduction in open interest, we just mean revert either way. But I think it's important to understand the mechanics of what takes place, right? So at the fundamental level, what is a long, what is a short? So a short is a buyer and a long is a future seller. So you're just reducing, right, the one side of that equation. Okay, so you're taking away you're taking away sellers, you're taking away buyers. Also, those liquidation levels are static. Yeah, they are. And they're also, you know what? I think that so let me word this carefully, because as someone who has a bigger account in the space, I don't want to disparage or say anything about a product that someone has put a lot of heart into. So HighBlock is an awesome platform. I used to share HighBlock back in the day, but not the liquidation levels. HighBlock had a CVD. They had some good tools that are order flow tools. As for the liquidation levels, even HighBlock says, if you look into the calculation, it's theoretical. They are predicted. Okay, so it's a combination of sorts, right? It's a combination of aggressive activity, and probably open interest, right? Just off the top of my head, you would imagine that it's similar to the idea behind certain longs versus shorts calculations, which we know, right? It's aggressive longs versus aggressive short and aggressive shorts, and it's based on a look back period. So that's going to change depending on where you're looking back to. But again, it makes a lot of assumptions, and it almost assumes. I feel like when people share the liquidation levels charts, they're like, price has to go through every level before what? It can continuously just trend in one direction. Like it has to revisit all points and take everybody out. That's just not the case. Yeah, no, I don't mean anything against it either, Julian. That's why I'm just clarifying. Yeah, so, and exchanges aren't just giving this information out, which is funny. But, yeah, so anyway. So about sharing techniques for looking at the depth chart. So looking at a depth chart. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about a depth chart. One, a depth chart's going to constantly change, right? So if we're looking at, let's go to Crypto Watch. All right, so if we're looking at a depth chart, we're looking at, the stacking of resting liquidity. Okay, so this is Crypto Watch. Resting, let me change the ink. I got to tell you guys, sometimes I'm on the ball with streams and I feel really lucid and on point. Sometimes I don't, and I think it comes down to fucking up the sound in the beginning, because that sound mishap in the beginning, knowing that I did it twice, that like I can't tell you how pissed off that makes me. Because then you start, so let's say someone pops into the stream, right? And we're not doing the stream to, we're doing the stream to build our YouTube presence, right? We think that it's for a good reason. So now someone hops into the stream for the first time, and all they see for the first 10 minutes of the video is they're going to leave the fucking stream, right? So hopefully they do a little bit of a forward analysis, but that just pisses me the fuck off. Anyway, so here's your asks and here's your bids, right? So this is resting liquidity. It's constantly going to change. I don't think that you're not going to get anything that's actionable from looking at the depth, right? What you can assume from depth is, let's say, for example, here's your depth chart, right? Here's bids. Okay, so bids. All right. And then here is asks. Okay. So here's your current price. Here's your asks. Oh, just use that. There we go. Make a nice A, even though I could just type it out if I wanted to. So bids and asks. If anyone's going to get on this, they're probably going to wonder. Probably should do a better job of just writing this stuff out instead of being lazy. Okay. Bids and asks. Okay. So current market price right down here. Now, the only way that you could assume that this is going to mean anything for the direction of price is if this remained constant and the process of orders hitting the book was a purely, so let me rephrase that. If the process of orders was a purely stochastic process, meaning that it was just random and they're thrown at the book, the stacking of orders or market depth would play a role on the direction of price. So let's just say we threw 1 million random orders at this order book, okay, and this depth, right? So it is ultimately the order book. If we had 1 million random orders, buys and sells, and let's say that each of them is for 1 BTC. If we threw those orders at the book randomly and we had a depth that looked like this with much more presence in the bids and the asks, in a purely stochastic process, if this remained the same, what would happen? Okay, there's less at the ask. So the path of least resistance would be upward. Randomly hitting the bids, randomly hitting the asks, it would eat away more at the asks. And ultimately, since there's less presence on the ask in terms of depth, the price would move up. That would be if there was a purely stochastic process, right? No informed traders, and if this remained constant. So I guess what you could say is that in the present, in a bull market, what is the constant? There's more demand, right, than there is supply. So if you were to measure this over the long run, this is probably what the book looks like, right? Not this extreme, but more often than not, the book looks like there's more stacked in the bid than there is in the ask. But I guess the one thing I want, that's not actionable for you though. So you can't some people observe this, but you can't just look at this and get an idea of whether it's a long or a short, because what it's going to do is it's going to constantly change, especially when it comes to what's taking place in near price. So if you're looking at this, you'll see that people they'll look at Crypto Watch or something like Bitcoin Wisdom. You can't really gain too much by looking at this, right? Because again, it's constantly going to be changing. You have a ton of algorithmic activity that's right around the spread, right? So you have market makers, you have bots, just flashing in and out. And again, it's not something that is that's really actionable. Yeah, gotta go. I gotta write something about the sound check. Yeah. Do you go into order flow as well? So in terms of order flow, we go into order flow on. Do you mean on BlockRoots? Yeah, that's exactly what we go into. just go through the chat real quick. Share some tickers. Let me see if you guys said anything that you want to see. I want to give away some memberships, and then I want to give away $100 in BTC. Oh, so another thing, Link. Link, I think, is going to take the same path as BTC and ETH. So this is something that I am back into position in. It's, you know, it's taking its time above the all-time high. But again, it's the first consolidation after break of all-time high, successful retest. Don't want to overthink this. So Link, ETH, BTC, I think they're all kind of moving in unison. I think that the benefit of Link is also from a relative standpoint, it's cheaper, right? So if you're coming onto Coinbase for the first time and you see ETH, you see BTC, you see Link, you know, a $25 Link looks like a future Bitcoin. Flow, Yaks, okay. So let's take a look at some of these pairs. I think I'm honestly going to change from OBS to something else. Do you guys have any recommendations for platforms to use? Because I'm like done with having any kind of interruption at the beginning of the stream. You know, I don't go off of a script or anything, so flow is very important. So if there are any platforms that anyone could suggest, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's add some of these. Okay, flow. Let's look at it versus BTC, and then versus USD, and then IOST. Yaks. Hopefully that gives us a chart. Otherwise, we'll go on to a different platform. LTC. Where's the BTC chart? There we go. And DOT, and then MTA, and then I'll XSplit bar. So I have that actually. I have XSplit Broadcaster too. Okay, so you tell me that that's a good one to use. Streamlabs. Yeah, it is OBS. I don't know what's going on with the sound. Like, I'll show you exactly. This is what I have, right? I have this. So I have all the scenes, and then I have the audio. So sometimes the sound works if I have no audio input capture on, right? So I left it off, okay? Because the sound is working. In the last few videos I did, the sound got fucked up. I took that off. It started working. And then I start it without it, and it doesn't work, right? And then I put it on, but I have it on default versus Yeti, and then it works. And then if I put it on, you know, if I leave it on long enough like that, it's like there's like I say, there's a ghost in the machine or something. It's not like it changes. Like, it keeps all my scenes the same. I don't have to save this again, so I don't know what the hell takes place that makes the sound sometimes work, sometimes not work. All right, so let's look at some of these pairs. All right, so flow. I don't know a whole lot about flow. Let's look at, let's get rid of this. Which one is it? Is it flow or flow protocol? Flow USD, so it must be this one. Supply? Oh, the supply is going to be infinite? 23 million circulating? I mean, that drastically changes things from a long-term perspective. I don't know, just to look at it briefly on CoinGecko. This is not something that, this looks like it's putting in the drift of death to the downside right now. So again, this is, yes, Dapper. Okay. This, what is this, honestly? So Flow USD, this must be just newly listed, right? Or maybe it's newly listed on that, and we'll be able to find a longer term chart here. Okay. Is it flow? This is not it, right? I'm just looking for any kind of, you know, greater price history. I don't think, unless it's that new. Is it that new? Oh, it is new. Okay, so thank you for saving me the time. So no low yet in, right? So no low yet. So then no higher low, and I can't get it in an alt like without seeing some type of structural bottom put in. because again, this is just drifting down right now. And I don't know where the floor gets put in, right? Your guess is as good as mine, but it could be down here, right? It could be right here. There's just nothing going on for me yet to get involved in this. And, you could look down at the lower time frames and start breaking it up like this, but I think that's really dangerous, right? So you could say, oh, this is where the range we've been accepted in for the last, couple days, 24 hours, right? But I definitely wouldn't want to get involved or touch this yet until we put in some type of, big structure like this. So just this kind of vertical candle coming from $3, putting in excess of 3-4x. You probably have a lot of weak hands up here, right? And you want to see that there's some type of unwind before this begins to move on. So I can't say anything honestly about this yet. iOS BTC. Get the volume off the chart. Oh my God, Jesus. All right, so so rule for me is weekly structure needs to be retaken with an alt for me to even consider it. I mean, this is against BTC, right? We were stuck within this range for about a year. So it's a good sign that you've turned against BTC now and begin to cover some ground. The last 3 weeks, obviously, we've kind of lost that progress. I would posit to say that this is just a short-term sign of strength against BTC. I haven't heard anything about iOS in a while, honestly. I mean, structurally against USD, this is what we have in the weekly. Initial support, higher time frame resistance again for over a year, right? A nuke through the entire level, right? In the entire 2019 range. So you would want to see that this access support right now. I don't know if you're necessarily going to get that, right? So far you're getting it, but I'm not necessarily certain that this is a sign of strength as much as this is just a big pump unwinding. And I say this with like a little bit of caution, and you could hear it in my voice, right, in my tone. Even though you share a pair, you want me to look at it, and I want to be able to tell you like, oh, that looks awesome. But I think that there's a lot of leaders right now, and you want to stick with the leaders. I don't know that a pair like this, which is how old now? This goes back. This is like one of the legacy pairs, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't, this is, look at all of this, just this period of dormancy. So I don't know, honestly. I mean, what I would say is, just as I've said to a lot of people recently, is that you want to stick with the strength, right? The horses that are the fastest horses in the race right now. I think that you have a lot of legacy assets that are pumping short-term pumps or putting in short-term pumps, but I don't think that it's going to be a case where when we have a bull market, everything's just going to be rising from the dead again. So I'd be really cautious with an old legacy pair. LTC is something that, I would actually say is something that a lot of people are sleeping on. So right now at support, right, at weekly support, but it's not going to take much for this to change. I think that there's already some whispering going on with more eyes coming onto this chart, right? So we have weekly support. It's not anything that's glamorous down here. But I think that, let me put on LTC's longer term USD chart. I don't think that LTC is just going to die off and we're, let's see, all right, here we go. I don't think that LTC is just going to die off, honestly. I suspect that it will still follow ETH. And I think that it'll benefit from always having a place in people's heart, right? And then there's cycle of pumps going from, Bitcoin, ETH, down to some of the larger caps. I think that it'll still benefit from that. So, finding support during a period when BTC and ETH are finding support, ETH breaking above the all-time high. I mean, if you're looking at local levels, just to break these up, you know, looking at this range roughly, if we start gaining above 160, I would assume that you're going back up to 192, 190 to 2, excuse me. So reattack these highs. And I don't think that this is going to, I think that this is ultimately going to follow BTC. I think it's going to follow BTC, ETH, and some of the more dominant pairs. I don't see that this just dies off like some other things that are legacy pairs. And LTC is listed, I mean, and this is somewhat substantiated by fundamentals. Isn't LTC a Litecoin, isn't it on PayPal still? Or isn't it on PayPal as well? So I'm still confident in it, honestly. So, DOT. I like DOT a lot. I like DOT a lot. I mean, DOT versus BTC, this is exactly what you want to see at a time like right now. Go just what consistently has been leading, stick with it, right? Don't overthink it. You know, you're going to look, I think what ultimately you'll do is you'll look back months from now and realize that a lot of these things you should have either traded less, or if you were going to consistently trade them actively, you should have at least held on to some type of, as they're called, suicide bag. And I think DOT is going to continuously put in strength. The whole Polkadot ecosystem is something that I'm very, very interested in learning more about. But the sign of strength against BTC is exactly what you want to see. I mean, we're looking at more recently, we have a weekly low in, okay, above the all-time high against BTC. In terms of, you know, now we've recovered it. Weekly high now up around 55886. What is the wife doing? Vacuuming. I guess we still have to use the vacuum even though we have a robo vacuum too. Let's see. So this looks good, right? Against BTC. And this looks awesome against USD. Right? And what do we think that we're going to get? Right? We've had consolidation after consolidation, expansion upward for some time. I don't see why this is not something that, I don't see why DOT can't hit something like 30, 40 bucks. If we just look at DOT in terms of size, it's one of the larger ones. So DOT is, you know, market cap is 18 million. If we're looking at the rest of the market, you know, that is, market cap's 18 million, right? Ethereum's 186, Bitcoin's just under 700 million. I think you could borrow from some of the pairs that don't really deserve their spots. I don't want to say anything explicitly. I think you guys can figure out which one I'm talking about. But I think that DOT can gather can gather a good amount of capital from things that aren't moving, as a major contender in the space for the next year or two. Let's see. SXP. Asians are still buying LTC pretty consistently. That's a good sign, right? And I think that the Coinbase, I think that very simple way of looking at how things are priced on Coinbase, I think it counts. Because what we're talking about is we're talking about a new retail push. And that's really, honestly, like the people that I know that have been reaching out to me lately, you wonder why they get into XRP, but they all do. Why they ask about these pairs that I'm like, oh God, because they look at them and they go onto Coinbase and they see that they're really cheap, and that's it. They think, you know, everything is a future Bitcoin. So SXP against BTC is starting to look really, you know, like it's starting to pick up steam again. I mean, ultimately we are, if we're looking at this on the weekly chart, looks like we're putting in some type of bottom against BTC. On USD, this was a really strong pair going back to, you know, June, July, and August. On against USD, SXP is swipe, right? God. Okay, so higher time frame support and resistance flip on the daily, right? Finally gained acceptance outside of this range, right? In that range from November. So I would expect continuation from this, right? Your higher time frame targets initially are going to be previous highs, so around $2. I don't see why this would not continue in this course. Any other things you guys want me to look at? This has just been, I'm going to I'm going to learn more about streaming today rather than I'm going to focus on individual pairs. You heard Gene say, yeah, I saw that too. I saw that as well. Everything though looks like it has some more wind in its sails, honestly. And the way that, again, that I'm looking at BTC is, all right, don't overcomplicate things on the higher time frame. Okay, that is a major fuck up. Should have looked at this for what it was, which was a move that was, you know, standard deviations above the norm. You have a 4-hour candle that is 20% into higher time frame resistance. Index is not even up and running, so futures are just becoming very costly. But now, so you have a major area that price has been rejected from, and it's not like it was rejected as much as it kind of fucking fell under its own weight. But now we're sort of moseying our way back up to there. I think that that's very bullish, right? But again, this is kind of, it's still within a range, right? If we're looking at this on the weekly, it's still within a range. These highs, though, as I said, I think the daily high, I think this daily high, holding this, a close through this level, is good enough. So close through this level, which is, again, what did I say? Well, actually, I must have been reading a different, I must have been reading the ticker earlier rather than the line. It's right around 36.65. So 36,650, 36,644. These highs right here, maintaining that level as support, I think is adequate on its own for at least what, you know, targeting these highs and then pushing back up towards the all-time high. And it's lining up nicely with this whole conference that's taking place with Saylor. You know, as I said in the beginning, there is, I think there's only positive can come from this, right? There's no sellers leaving that conference today. MTA. MTA is finally, it's came to life. What do you mean? I don't look at the channel 1 on the 4-hour? Huh? You talking about this channel? Yeah, I keep in mind the progress of price if it's respecting a trend line, but no, don't be surprised if I don't look at something that you look at. Yeah. I mean, if that's what you're talking about, are you talking about that channel? You talking about this little, this level that we've been respecting? I think it's random to ask if I don't look at something because there's probably a lot of things I don't look at. But back to what I was saying. MTA. This is exactly what you would want to see, right? Retaking weekly levels and turning them into support. So that is between 322 and 266. Right, so that cluster right there, us finding support right around here, right around this level, would be tremendously bullish, right? And I think that now that MTA has gone through this period of just absolute, it looked like it was dead. And I was in MTA in the beginning, in and out of it, and then just completely, I didn't even keep it on my radar, honestly. I think that the fact that we move sideways for this long and have had a clear, resolution to the upside, anything that's showing strength and following major DeFi pairs, I don't see why they would lose strength going into the bull market. One thing that I will say, and I forgot to say this earlier with ETH and the CME, going back to the drop, kind of a large bull flag. Let me look at that so we clarify what you're talking about. Going back to the drop. What drop? You mean just this or this? Yeah, like you could draw all these levels that you want, right? Like I say, like I'll just draw a bunch of random lines right now. Okay. And then we'll find stuff that works. Like you found that this one worked. Look, touch. Oh shit, when we lost it, this was resistance. Look at that. That was resistance. Okay. I don't focus too much on trend lines. I could use them at diagonal trend lines, excuse me. I could use them as triggers, but I don't focus too much on them because you end up, you fit it after the fact. A supply and demand level, a horizontal level, it just is. Price having trouble passing through a price point. There's nothing subjective about that. But, like these lines, I could just draw a couple lines on the chart and look, we have the perfect trend line down here. So yeah, I think I see what you're talking about. Are you talking about this? Or are you talking about this? Either way, I mean, I think that when price is rejected from a level, and again, we have some tailwinds right now, I think that it's bullish that we're back at the level. I don't need necessarily a diagonal trend line to confirm that. Random line indicator. Yeah. And I don't mean to like break your chops, Jan. This is what happens when my stream gets fucked up in the beginning and I have this like cortisol in my veins. But this is never happening again. The streams will never, if you ever see me talking in a stream again and my mouth is moving and there's no sound, the next thing you're going to see is the screen go blank. And then the next time you see me, I'm going to have a cast on my hand. Because, no. All right. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, no, again, I just think BTC looks good because it's looking like it's putting in a bottom, right? But again, I don't want to be overly bullish, right? We're still within two pretty important weekly levels. I'll take an earlier entry based on the daily level right here, but I'll take a position off of that. I'll take a swing off of that if it develops, right? If we start developing decent support above this level. But I think that your clear confirmation is above or now back below this weekly level. And even if we lose this weekly level, I think that when you lose a daily and then if you recover it, this could still just go on much longer, right? As it's just the range in 2020 or 2019 now. This was 98 days long. We're 89 days long. So how many days are we into this? Half of that from the first big low before the high, 30 days into it. We're only a month into it. It could take longer, but in a bull market, you wouldn't want it to. If this is a bull market, you want this to be done, right? You want this to lead to continuation. Yeah. So anyway, about ETH. Oh, again, to go back over ETH again. And then I'm going to do the giveaways, and then I'm going to we're going to finish the stream up, and all I'm going to do is figure out the best way to do the stream moving forward so we don't have those mistakes. Because, I get pretty flustered sometimes when things don't work out my way. I'm pretty big about controlling things, and not like to crazy, not crazy, but just like, I don't want that shit to happen, right? ETH. One thing I want to talk about with ETH real quick is I think that ETH is going to, I think it could pull back from the CME listing, right? I think that ends up having a negative effect on a lot of alts too. So I'll say that as well. I think that if you see ETH has, like, let's say CME listing, ETH has a substantial pullback. I think that you're going to get some more entry opportunities into alts as well. So just to get that out there, I think that anything that with ETH is now, I think it's a good confidence measure for DeFi and alts, as it always is, right? And then last thing, what did I want to go over? There's one other thing. My flow is all messed up. I think we'll just give away some memberships, and then I'll get to right to learning how to do the stream perfectly next time. Let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to cover? Oh, so someone asked about Shroom. Let's see. I have a few feelings about Shroom. And, they're my feelings, right? I was in Shroom twice. Substantially. Okay. And And when I say substantially, I mean I was one of the biggest wallets in Shroom. So it's a punt of mine, but it's a punt of mine, meaning that it's a very speculative play. But I had a substantial position in it. The thing that bothers me with Shroom, and this is just my opinion, and I could be buying higher a month from now because of this logic, right? And I would be willing to. So the thing about Shroom is they have been putting together this DEX, right? And I think it's been like 2 months now that they've been constantly putting off the release of it. And it's been like, it hasn't been tentative, right? It hasn't been, we might release the DEX in January and February. It's been, we're releasing the DEX, like first week of January. And then first week of January rolls around and then it's, okay, we're releasing it, mid-January, end of January. And the goal, it's constantly been moved. So that to me is kind of unnerving, right? I don't like that because so you have to understand where that comes from. It's not because I don't think that they have a product, right? I think that what they're also trying to do is time the market. They've said, well, we want to release it during a time when there's, I guess when they're swimming upstream, right? But that's now, right? And I think that you're assuming too much as a developer in your ability. I think that you're thinking that you have more of an ability to time the market than you do, right? Because traders have a tough enough time timing the market. So as a developer to say something like, oh, when the time is right, like that's a difficult thing in and of itself. So to assume that, you're going to be able to do that and like release Shroom at the best possible time, you could release it at the worst possible time. Like, what isn't good about this time? You have tailwinds right now. So that, and, again, I'm not too sure about how ETH responds going into CME listing. So who knows what that's going to do to DeFi. There's all these variables to think of. And then the most important thing is, again, it's not that are they going to have a DEX. I don't think that they're like bullshitting and they're a rug pull or anything. It's just that you could have released the DEX and in this time found out all the things that might occur when you release a product, which are bugs, right? So what happens if there's this whole buildup with Shroom, right? People are getting long now. I see the Telegram. There's a lot of positivity. There's also a lot of moon boys. And then there's also a lot of contentiousness between people that are like, aren't you going to release the DEX? So these people, to me, they remind me of weak hands, right? They're in it for the short-term gain. And what happens if the DEX comes out, it's released, and there's no immediate response in price because people that are long are already long. And then you have to start getting more people to buy in. And what happens if that response isn't fast enough or adequate enough for the people that are holding now? They just got in, they're worried about it going up in the next few days. And then what if on top of that, because it's a product, right? You release the DEX and the DEX has what a lot of DEXs end up having. It has any kind of issue, right? It has a bug. It has something let's say it's something that just routinely needs to be fixed. It was an oversight. How are people going to feel about that? How are weaker hands going to feel about that? Right? How are they going to feel about that? Are they going to be inclined to sell? Are they going to be worried? Are they going to panic? So I'm just like, I guess there's a bunch of things right now that I think I could probably get a better price, right? Maybe I can't. Another thing is that this is there's not a major concentration of ownership, right? It is community owned to a degree. It's not like there's been a lot of front running. The devs have a lot. There's some large wallets. But I don't know. I think that assets benefit actually from having a bunch of whales. They want price to appreciate, right? If you get a lot of later whales as well. So if you get someone like myself who didn't get in at, initially my Shroom buyback here was around 1 cent. And I got I don't remember again if I got a 7 or a 10x out of that. I know it was anywhere between a 7 and a 10x. So I got that, right? So now, but let's say, I'm buying in and I'm buying the same quantity that I bought back here. So I'm buying that much in, okay, because I want a substantial portion of this again. So my cost basis at that point, I need to get a lot of upside to make that worth it. All right. So if you have people that are accumulating a lot right here and there's no immediate response, yeah, there's just a lot of things to think of. And then the last thing I'll say, which is not a path I like to go down too often, is it kind of reminds me of what Haka looks like. Haka has this consolidation at resistance, so similar to right here. So it looks like it's grinding up the entire time, right? It's onwards and upwards. Everyone's going to, talk about this, and I don't care about the way the drawing looks. You get the idea, right? It's consolidating, floating upward. It gives you this little push, and then it just falls flat. And another thing to remind yourself is like all of these projects, they have like the best intentions in mind, unless it's a pure rug pull. Like the legitimate projects, like they have goals, right? They think that they're going to be something that's transformational. And not everyone wins, right? Not everyone makes it. Not everyone goes on to be, a major player in the space. So it's easy to like be in a Telegram and to be like, rah, rah, this thing is going to be amazing. But everyone's saying that. So I try not to listen in too much, because otherwise you'll be blinded to the fact that, hey, these things actually, they look great. And then suddenly like 2 whales sell and then they look like shit. So, let's give away some memberships and then wrap it up. So the way I'm going to give away these memberships is I'm going to use, the comments right now. So pretty much everyone who commented is, I don't think, so it looks like we've gotten a lot of comments so far. So I'll give everyone a second. If you've already left a comment, I'll give you another minute to leave another one. But then let's see, the time right now. So I'm going to give everybody 1 minute to leave a comment. So starting from, let's see, where's my watch? All right, so I'm going to give everyone 30 seconds to leave a comment, and then the 30 seconds to follow as for any of the lag. So leave a comment right now, and it's not going to be based on you saying pick me. It's going to be based on random number generators. So we'll see, and I will pick afterward, and I'll leave a. So this is not a comment right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a comment on the YouTube video. So this is different. This is not a comment in the chat. So leave a comment on the YouTube video, so below. And it might be after the video posts, but what I'm going to do is use the numbers now to determine who in the top 20 gets picked, right? So I'll pick 3 people. So all right, but again, it's on the actual comments. It's not on the comment thing that's on the live video. It's under the comments under the video. So let's do this right now. Random number generator. Oh, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use the random comment picker. So what I'm going to do after this video is, let's see, random comment picker. All right, 1 sec. It's comment picker on Twitter, on YouTube. All right, YouTube giveaway winner. I've used this before. So I'm going to pick actually 5 people. So I'll pick 5 people. Your comment, again, is going to have to be on the other comment thing. So for anyone who's not listening, it's not on the live stream comment. It's on the video underneath. Okay. And I'm going to pick 5 winners. And then I'll also pick 1 winner to win $100 in BTC. Right, and the 1 winner to win $100 in BTC will be off of these comments right now. So it looks like we have over 100 comments. So we will use a random number generator. And we'll say out of 100, min, max, generate. Yeah, so in a second. So when the video loads, it might be like 10, 15 minutes. Either way, I'm going to do this after the fact. And then I'll message you, whoever wins. And you'll see underneath, right? You'll be able to see that, oh, people did win because I'll have left comments under there. But right now I'm going to pick a number to give away the $100 in BTC. Right, I see App Eagle. It says no comment box. Once the video is loaded, the comment box will there. So you're going to have to write a comment after the fact. But hey, if you want to win the membership, that's what you got to do. You got to do some work. So let's see. Comment number 85. So I'm going to go through these comments. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. All right, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. Okay. So, Bipin Ramachandran, same name as the Ramachandran awesome neuroscientist. Bipin, you've won a membership. Okay. I mean, you've won $100 in BTC. But fuck it, man. I just told you won a membership, so I'm going to give you $100 in BTC and give you a membership too. Okay. So you've won double. All right. Okay, guys. All right, so that's that. Yeah, smaller number needed next time. That's that. So I'm going to do some homework on live streams because we can't have that happen because it totally fucked my flow up. And, we can't have that. That's not something that I deal with lightly. I mean, I keep it light, but you know what I'm saying. Just messing around. All right, Bipin. So you want a membership. Message me on Twitter. So message me on Twitter, and then also send me your BTC address in that message or whatever address you want to use, and I'll accommodate whatever cryptocurrency you want me to send you. So that's $100, and then the $400 membership. So cool, guys. I will talk to everybody soon. Yeah, exercise proper risk management and trade effectively.